Now, let's talk about Buddha for a moment, because there's not, you can Google and read about Buddha and so on, but Master Nagarjuna starts with these 12 deeds that the Buddha did and explains them. And the Tibetan children learned this text called the Zepichuni, which means the 12 deeds of the Buddha. And they chant it in the mornings. And it's absolutely adorable. So the Buddha was born about 2,500 years ago in a royal family to King Shodadana and Queen Maya. Now, around the time of his conception, Queen Maya dreamed of a white elephant with 6 tusks entering her right side. And that's an auspicious indication that she would give birth to a special being. When the time of the birth drew near, she was traveling with her servants to visit her family home. However, they didn't reach their destination in time, and Queen Maya went to a beautiful garden in Lumbini, which is in western Nepal, to give birth to her son. She reached up to grab the limbs of a banyan tree for support, and the baby Buddha sprang out of her right side without causing her any pain. The child was extremely alert and agile, unusually so for a newborn child. And after his birth, they say that he took 7 steps in each direction, and lotus flowers sprang from his footsteps. The baby was given the name Siddhartha Gautama. At the time of his birth, a Brahmin prophet visited the king and predicted that the child was destined to either become a king of the world or a great spiritual teacher. Now, King Shodadana, the Buddha's father, obviously wanted his son to become heir to his throne. Therefore, he did not want to give the prince any reason to turn to a spiritual life in quest for answers to difficult existential questions. Therefore, he shielded Prince Siddhartha Gautama, from being exposed to any form of suffering. And Siddhartha lived a blissful life in the kingdom, full of luxury and splendor, where his every desire was fulfilled. He excelled in everything he did, his studies, sports such as archery and so on. He was also extremely handsome. Eventually, he married and had a child. Not long after the birth of his own son, Prince Siddhartha became insatiably curious about the world outside the palace grounds. One day, he snuck out with some servants, and during his sojourn, he saw 4 things: a sick person, a dead body, a wandering mendicant, a holy seeker, and an old person. And when he saw the sick person, he asked his servants, "What is this?" And the attendants were not sure how to proceed, and they looked at each other and said, "This is a sick person." They explained how everybody gets sick, and that at some point this would also happen to Prince Siddhartha, and everyone knew he knew. He couldn't believe it. He hadn't been sick until, up until this time, and he'd never seen sickness before. His father was really good at shielding him from these things. When he saw the old person walking around, he asked, "What is that?" And they explained to him that if you live long enough, you'll eventually become old, and so will your father, your wife, and your son. And this, again, shocked him. When he inquired about the dead body, he was startled to hear that this would also happen to him and all of his loved ones, friends, and everyone in the entire kingdom. He was extremely uncomfortable, thinking that he would have to die in this terrible way, full of suffering. But then he saw a mendicant, looking serene and peaceful, and he wondered, what is this person doing? What's he searching for? Why is he wandering about? What's he learning? So when the prince returned to the palace, he couldn't bear to see the exquisite buildings, the grounds, and all of the splendors of his royal life. He couldn't bear to endure a future in which those he loved were destined to suffer sickness, aging, and death. He resolved to leave and not return until he had found an answer to the problems of life. And one night, he secretly left the palace grounds, compelled to find a way to end pain forever. Siddhartha explored many different spiritual traditions. With every teacher he met, he quickly surpassed their level of knowledge and meditative attainment and found limitations to their methods and understanding of reality. Eventually, with 5 of his own students, he began the practice of austere asceticism, believing that forsaking the needs of the body would result in a very high meditative state, a meditative absorption, and eventually freedom from suffering. They starved themselves, eating only what they could fit on a blade of grass a day. After engaging In these austerities for 6 years, Siddhartha found himself too weak to meditate. And one day he was sitting by the Naranja River, and a small wooden boat floated by. On the boat was a musician who was tuning a stringed instrument. And the musician noted to his student that was in the boat with him that for the instrument to play perfectly, it was important that it be tuned neither too tight nor too loose. And for Siddhartha, this was a message that the path to liberation must lie in the middle way between living a life of indulgence and practicing extreme austerity. Neither path led to the end of suffering. And at that point, a maiden appeared and offered Siddhartha a tasty rice and milk porridge. It had some special qualities so that when he ate it, he received all the energy that he needed to proceed with his meditation and his journey to enlightenment. Now, with renewed determination, Siddhartha went to a place now called Bodh Gaya, which is in northeastern India, not too far from the Naranja River. And he sat down under a beautiful pipal tree and resolved not to move from his meditation seat until he had cleared the remaining obstacles to enlightenment from his mind. As he sat in his final meditation, the last delusions came to him like beings called Mara's daughters. Mara is the Lord of Death, and they tried to disrupt his meditation. They threw intense mental obstacles at him: anger, confusion, attachment, desire. He remained unshakable. And finally, they challenged him, saying, "What gives you the right to believe you can attain omniscience?" Siddhartha touched the earth with the middle finger of his right hand and said, "The earth is my witness of all the rebirths I have had, of all the effort I have made to end my suffering, and of my wish to be of ultimate benefit to others." With that, the earth shook, and the final Maras were dispelled, and as dawn rose the next day, he became a Buddha, a fully enlightened one. From the time Prince Siddhartha attained enlightenment, he was known as Shakyamuni Buddha. Shakya was the name of the clan over which his father Shodadana was king. Muni means sage, and Buddha means fully awakened, or all-knowing one. So Shakyamuni Buddha was the fully awakened sage of the Shakya clan. At first, the Buddha decided not to teach what he had realized to others. He wasn't sure that people would accept his teachings or be able to understand them. And then Brahma, one of the gods of our world, came and pleaded with Buddha many times to share his knowledge. When the Buddha reflected upon who would be his most suitable disciples, he concluded that the 5 ascetics with whom he had endured so much hardship on the quest for enlightenment were the students he would teach. He walked towards Varanasi, a holy city near the river Ganga, sometimes pronounced Ganges, but that actually means bald man, so it's Ganga. Just outside of Varanasi is a small village called Sarnath. Lord Buddha went there to a beautiful park full of deer and found his 5 fellow ascetics still engaging in austerities. They were rather judgmental of Siddhartha because he, in their mind, gave up the quest for enlightenment and showed weakness when he ate the rice porridge, which broke him from the avowed path of austerity. Now, when they saw him coming, they could see the transformation in him, and they wanted at first to reject him, but after looking more carefully, they realized something significant has changed in him. So they spontaneously generated great respect and devotion toward him and sincerely requested him to teach what he had learned. And it was then at Sarnath that the Buddha gave his first teaching on the 4 Noble Truths. And the Buddha taught for nearly 50 years. And around the age of 80, he passed away in a town in eastern India called Kushinagar, and so gave one of his most profound teachings on impermanence. These days, there's a shrine there to honor the spot where the Buddha passed away. Inside the shrine is a Buddha statue lying on the right side with his head resting on his right hand, and it's said to be a conducive position to subdue negative mental states, particularly anger, and it's good posture to cultivate when you go to sleep, training for the time of our death so that we may also pass into the state beyond sorrow. So this is the end of the introduction for this part, and we'll be moving on to the 3 principal paths.